The howling wind carried more than just dust and tumbleweeds across the barren streets of Lordsburg, New Mexico Territory. In the autumn of 1878, it carried the desperate scent of hunger. Zara Fletcher pressed herself against the wall of the general store, her once fine dress now tattered and stained from weeks on the road, as she watched the shopkeeper turn the wooden sign from open to closed. Her stomach twisted painfully, a constant reminder of 3 days without proper food. When the street emptied and dusk painted the horizon in violent shades of orange and purple, she made her decision. She would not starve to death. Not today. The back door of the general store wasn't properly latched, a stroke of fortune for a woman with nothing left to lose. Zara's trembling fingers worked quickly, gathering only what she needed. A small sack of flour, some dried beans, and a strip of jerky she immediately tore into with her teeth. The relief was immediate and overwhelming, tears springing to her eyes as she chewed. She was so consumed by the simple pleasure of eating that she didn't hear the footsteps until it was too late. "Madam, I believe you forgot to pay for those items." The deep voice froze her in place. Slowly, she turned to face the barrel of a Colt revolver and the stern face of a man silhouetted in the doorway. Tall and broad-shouldered, with a weather-beaten Stetson pulled low over his eyes, he was unmistakably one of the cowboys from the Double V Ranch outside town, the largest cattle operation in the territory. Her voice failed her. There was no explanation that would suffice. She'd been caught red-handed. The man stepped forward, holstering his gun as light from the single lantern illuminated his features. He wasn't as old as she'd first thought, perhaps 30, with a strong jaw shadowed by several days' growth of beard. His eyes, a startling deep blue, assessed her with unexpected gentleness. "You're half-starved," he observed, his gaze taking in her too thin frame and the desperate way she clutched the food. Zara straightened her spine, summoning what little dignity remained. "I intend to pay when I can." "I'm not a thief by nature, sir." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I'm sure the sheriff would be interested in that explanation." He paused, considering her for a long moment. "What's your name?" "Zara Fletcher." He removed his hat, revealing thick dark hair with strands of premature silver at the temples. "Ryder Vance. I own the Double V." He glanced at the meager items she'd gathered. "Those won't last you long." Zara swallowed hard, expecting him to call for the sheriff or worse. Instead, he reached into his pocket and placed coins on the counter, more than enough to cover what she'd taken. "I need help at my ranch," he said abruptly. "Cook left last month and the hands are threatening mutiny over my biscuits. You know how to cook?" The question caught her off guard. "Yes, but it's honest work with room and board," he continued, as if her answer settled the matter. "Better than stealing or starving." Zara hesitated, weighing her limited options. This stranger offered salvation, but at what cost? She'd learned the hard way that men's kindness often came with hidden expectations. "Why would you help me?" she asked, suspicion evident in her voice. Ryder Vance replaced his hat, his expression unreadable. "4 years ago, I was where you are. Someone gave me a chance instead of a jail cell." He gathered the items she'd attempted to steal, adding a few more from the shelves before placing them in a burlap sack. "I'm just passing along the favor." He gestured toward the door. "My horse is outside. We'll settle with Michaels in the morning about the food." Zara stood rooted to the spot, uncertain. The cowboy sighed, his patience evident despite the late hour. "Miss Fletcher, I'm offering you a job, not asking for your hand in marriage. You're free to leave any time if the arrangement doesn't suit you, but tonight I'm offering a warm meal and a roof." Her stomach growled loudly in the silence that followed, making the decision for her. With nothing but the clothes on her back and the ghosts of her past chasing her westward, what choice did she have? "I accept your offer, Mr. Vance," she said finally, her voice steadier than she felt. "Though I warn you, my biscuits might not be much better than yours." The corner of his mouth lifted in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "They couldn't possibly be worse." The night was cold as they rode double on his horse. the powerful animal carrying them away from Lordsburg and into the vast darkness of the New Mexico territory. Zara sat stiffly in front of him, acutely aware of his solid presence at her back and his arms on either side of her as he held the reins. They traveled in silence for nearly an hour, the rhythmic sound of hoofbeats and the occasional distant howl of coyotes the only interruption to her tumultuous thoughts. The Double V Ranch materialized out of the darkness like an island in a sea of prairie grass, a substantial two-story house with a wide porch, flanked by a barn, bunkhouse, and several outbuildings. A single lamp burned in one window, a beacon in the wilderness. As they approached, a dog barked, soon joined by another. "Home," Ryder said simply, the word carrying a weight she couldn't quite decipher. He helped her dismount with strong hands at her waist, the brief contact sending an unexpected flutter through her chest that she attributed to exhaustion and hunger. Two dogs circled them excitedly, a chocolate-colored hound and a smaller terrier mix that jumped and yapped. "Down, Scout." "Settle, Bandit," he commanded, though there was affection in his tone. "They're harmless," he assured her, though they fancy themselves fierce protectors. The ranch house was surprisingly welcoming inside, with solid furniture, clean floors, and walls adorned with a few modest paintings. A large stone fireplace dominated one wall, embers still glowing faintly. "The kitchen's through there," Ryder pointed. "I'll show you to your room so you can rest. We can sort out details in the morning." He led her upstairs to a small but comfortable bedroom with a narrow bed, washstand, and chest of drawers. A handmade quilt in rich blues and reds covered the bed, and clean white curtains framed the window. "This was my sister's room," he explained, lighting the bedside lamp. "She's married now, lives in Santa Fe." Zara stood awkwardly in the center of the room, overwhelmed by the unexpected turn of events and the stranger's inexplicable kindness. "Mr. Vance, I don't know how to thank you," he shook his head. "Nothing to thank me for yet, rest now." "There's water in the pitcher if you want to wash up." He hesitated at the door. "There's no lock, but you have my word you'll not be disturbed. My room's at the end of the hall if you need anything." After he left, Zara sank onto the edge of the bed, her legs suddenly unable to support her. The mattress was soft, the sheets smelled of sunshine and soap, and for the first time in weeks she felt something dangerously close to hope. Morning arrived with the sound of roosters and the distant lowing of cattle. For a disorienting moment, Zara couldn't remember where she was. The unfamiliar ceiling above her, the comfortable bed beneath it seemed like a dream after so many nights spent in barns or under the stars. Then the events of the previous evening came flooding back, and with them, uncertainty about what this day would bring. She washed quickly in the cold water, smoothed her hair as best she could, and put on the same worn dress, wishing she had something more presentable. When she ventured downstairs, she found Ryder Vance already at the stove, frowning at a cast-iron skillet where eggs were quickly transforming from breakfast to charcoal. "Good morning," she said tentatively from the doorway. He turned, relief crossing his features. "You're just in time to witness the daily disaster." He gestured at the smoking pan. "This is why I need help." Despite everything, Zara found herself smiling. "Allow me," she said, stepping forward to take the skillet from him. Their fingers brushed briefly in the exchange, and she noticed calluses on his hands, the mark of a man who worked alongside his ranch hands, not just gave orders. "Coffee's ready," he offered, stepping back to give her space at the stove. "It might be the only thing I don't ruin." She set aside the ruined eggs and quickly took stock of the kitchen, surprisingly well appointed with good quality cookware, a substantial pantry, and an impressive cast-iron stove. Within minutes, she had fresh eggs frying, bacon sizzling, and biscuit dough coming together. "You really can cook," Ryder observed, watching her confident movements around the kitchen. "My mother believed it was an essential skill for any woman," Zara replied, keeping her focus on the food, even one with other aspirations. He seemed to catch the wistfulness in her tone but didn't press. Instead, he set the table for two and poured coffee into mismatched mugs. They ate in companionable silence, Ryder finishing 3 helpings of eggs and 5 biscuits before sitting back with a satisfied expression. "Miss Fletcher, you've already earned your keep," he said. "Those were the best biscuits I've had since leaving Virginia." "You're from Virginia?" she asked, curious despite her resolve to keep emotional distance from this temporary arrangement. "Born and raised." A shadow crossed his face. "Left after the war, needed a fresh start." The war had ended 13 years ago, but Zara knew its ghost still haunted many. She nodded, understanding the desire for reinvention all too well. "What brought you to New Mexico?" he asked, turning the conversation away from himself. Zara stiffened, her guard instantly rising. "Opportunity," she said vaguely. "The same as most, I suppose." Ryder studied her for a moment, then nodded, accepting her non-answer. "Well, about your duties here, primarily cooking for me and the hands. There are 8 men working for me currently. 3 meals a day, nothing fancy needed. They're grateful for anything that's not burnt." He paused. "The house could use some attention too, if you're willing. I can adjust your wages accordingly." Wages? She hadn't expected payment beyond room and board. $30 a month plus room and board, he said matter-of-factly. "More if you take on housekeeping duties." It was a generous offer, more than fair for the territory. Zara nodded quickly before he could reconsider. "I accept, thank you, good." He stood, gathering his hat. "I need to check the north pasture today. The men will come in for lunch around noon. There's a bell on the porch to call them." He hesitated. "Is there anything you need from town, clothes or women's things?" The unexpected thoughtfulness of the question caught her off guard. Yes, actually." "If it wouldn't be too much trouble, make a list. I'll have one of the hands ride in." He moved toward the door but stopped, turning back with an awkward expression. "Miss Fletcher, I should make something clear. The men know I've hired a cook, but they don't know you're." He gestured vaguely at her. "A woman," she supplied dryly. "A young, unmarried woman," he clarified. "They're good men, but you're concerned about my reputation." The idea seemed almost laughable given her current circumstances. "I'm concerned about their behavior," he corrected. "And yes, gossip travels fast in these parts. For your protection and comfort, perhaps we could say you're my cousin, come to help after hearing about my dire cooking situation." The logical part of her appreciated his foresight, even as something she refused to examine felt disappointed at being relegated to cousin status. "That seems sensible," she agreed. "Cousin Zara it is," he nodded, seeming relieved. "I'll be back before supper." He paused again, looking uncertain for the first time. "This arrangement, it's temporary, until you decide what you want to do next or where you want to go. I'm not." He struggled for words. "Keeping me?" she supplied, raising an eyebrow. The corner of his mouth twitched. "Exactly. You're free to leave whenever you choose. Though I hope my cooking hasn't been so traumatic that you'll flee immediately." With that, he settled his hat firmly on his head and strode out, leaving Zara alone in the big house, wondering what twist of fate had led her to this strange situation, and how long it would be before her past caught up with her. The ranch hands arrived for lunch precisely at noon. Summoned by the bell, Zara rang with some trepidation. They filed into the kitchen with the cautious curiosity of men encountering something unexpected in their familiar territory. She had prepared a substantial meal of bean soup, cornbread, and apple cobbler, hoping quantity would make up for any shortcomings in the hastily assembled fare. 8 men of varying ages stood awkwardly in the kitchen, hats in hands, staring at her with expressions ranging from surprise to outright suspicion. "Gentlemen," she began, mustering confidence, "I'm Zara Fletcher, Mr. Vance's cousin from back east. I'll be handling the cooking duties from now on." A murmur went through the group. The oldest among them, a weathered man with a magnificent white mustache, stepped forward. "Madam, I'm Hank Simmons, foreman here at Double V for nigh on 15 years. He gave a slight bow. "We're mighty pleased to meet you, though the boss didn't mention having family coming." "It was rather sudden," Zara improvised. I found myself at loose ends after a change in circumstances. My cousin kindly offered me a position. A younger man with freckles scattered across his sunburned face grinned widely. Well, if that cornbread tastes half as good as it smells, you can be my cousin too, miss. That's enough, Danny, Hank admonished, though there was no real heat in his tone. He made quick introductions of the other men. Brothers Miguel and Pablo Hernandez, quiet Tom White who barely nodded in acknowledgement, jovial Bill Peterson whose belly strained his belt, solemn Nathan James who appeared to be part Indian, and the youngest, Jimmy Carter, barely out of his teens with an earnest face. Pleased to meet you all, Zara said, genuinely meaning it. Now please sit and eat while it's hot. Any lingering awkwardness dissolved once the men began eating. They devoured everything with appreciative sounds and repeated compliments, their initial wariness replaced by the universal male approval of good food. Zara found herself relaxing, even smiling at their banter and teasing. Miss Fletcher, Hank said as they finished, if I'd known the boss was hiding cooking talent in his family tree, I'd have written to you myself months ago. These boys have been living on burnt beans and rock-hard biscuits since Mrs. Peabody left. The boss tries, Jimmy offered loyally, but cooking ain't his gift. Bill patted his stomach with a contented sigh. This here's the first decent meal we've had in an age, might actually put some meat on young Jimmy's bones. The afternoon passed quickly as Zara took inventory of the pantry, planned meals for the coming week, and explored the house. Despite Ryder's comment about housekeeping needs, the place was relatively tidy, not immaculate, but far from the bachelor squalor she'd half expected. There were signs of a woman's touch in the curtains, quilts, and arrangement of furniture, likely from his sister's time there. In the study, she found a bookshelf filled with an eclectic collection, practical guides to ranching and animal husbandry alongside volumes of poetry, history, and literature. Her fingers traced the spine of Pride and Prejudice with surprise, not what she'd expected from a frontier rancher. A framed photograph on the desk caught her attention, a family portrait showing a younger Ryder in a Confederate uniform, standing beside a seated older couple, and a pretty young woman who must be his sister. Their fine clothes and the formal studio setting spoke of wealth and position a stark contrast to his current life. That was taken right before I left for the war. Zara startled at Ryder's voice from the doorway, guilty at being caught snooping. I'm sorry, I was just getting acquainted with the house, he finished for her, his tone neutral as he crossed to stand beside her. It's all right. He looked at the photograph with an expression she couldn't quite interpret, not quite sadness, but something deeper, more complex. Elizabeth, my sister, he said, pointing to the young woman. And my parents, Robert and Catherine Vance of Fairfield Plantation, Albemarle County, Virginia. There was a formality in how he named them that suggested distance, emotional if not physical. Your family looks distinguished, she offered. They were. The past tense hung in the air between them. Father died at Petersburg in '65, mother passed 3 years later, influenza. I'm sorry, Zara said softly, meaning it. He shrugged, the gesture belying the weight of the losses. It was a long time ago. He changed the subject abruptly. I see you met the men. How did that go? Very well. They seemed pleased with lunch, I heard. A genuine smile softened his features. Hank waylaid me the moment I rode in, singing your praises. Said you've saved us all from certain starvation. Hardly that dramatic, she demurred, though pleased by the report. I brought your things from town, he said, gesturing toward the hallway. Had Miguel pick them up, hope everything's satisfactory. She followed him to find 2 parcels and a small trunk in the entryway. But I never gave you a list, she said, confused. Asked Mrs. Thornton at the mercantile to put together necessities for a lady your size, he explained. Hope that wasn't presumptuous. Figured you'd need things right away and you can always exchange anything that's not suitable. The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched her deeply. Thank you. That was very kind. He looked uncomfortable with her gratitude. Practical, not kind, can't have my cook running around in one dress. He cleared his throat. I should let you get settled then. Supper at 6. It will be ready, she assured him. After he left, Zara opened the parcels to find 3 serviceable dresses, undergarments, nightgowns, stockings, a warm shawl, and even a pair of sturdy boots, all simple but of good quality. The trunk contained toiletries, a hairbrush, soap, and other personal items a woman might need. Mrs. Thornton had been thorough and tactful in her selections. As she changed into one of the new dresses, a dark blue calico that fit surprisingly well, Zara tried to reconcile the man who'd caught her stealing with the one who'd just shown such consideration. Ryder Vance was proving to be more complicated than she'd initially assumed, and that realization was both intriguing and unsettling. The first week at Double V established a rhythm to Zara's days. She rose before dawn to start breakfast, served the men at sunrise, spent mornings baking and preparing lunch, afternoons preserving late garden vegetables or tending to household tasks, and evenings cooking dinner, usually just for herself and Ryder, as the hands ate earlier and retired to the bunkhouse. Those quiet evening meals became unexpectedly pleasant. Initially stiff and formal, their conversations gradually relaxed as they discovered shared interests in books and music. Ryder, she learned, played the violin, though he insisted on calling it a fiddle, and had a surprisingly extensive knowledge of literature for a man who spent his days in the saddle. Harvard, he explained when she commented on it. Class of '61, though I never finished. War interrupted. You left Harvard to fight for the Confederacy? She asked, unable to keep surprise from her voice. His expression turned guarded. My father expected it, family honor and all that. He set down his fork. I was young and foolish, caught up in Southern pride without understanding what we were really fighting for or against. And now I understand too well. He met her gaze directly. I lost my taste for causes, just want to live quietly and cause no harm. She nodded, respecting both his candor and his evolution. That seems a worthy ambition. As October deepened toward November, bringing frost-edged mornings and brilliant blue skies, Zara found herself settling into life at Double V with alarming ease. The work was hard but satisfying. The men treated her with respect that gradually warmed to friendship. And for the first time in longer than she cared to remember, she felt safe. That feeling was shattered on a crisp Tuesday morning when she walked into town with Miguel to purchase supplies. She'd been to Lordsburg several times now, becoming a familiar face at the mercantile and developing a nodding acquaintance with several townsfolk. On this day, however, a new poster tacked to the sheriff's office stopped her cold. Wanted for questioning Zara Fletcher in connection with the death of Harold Blackburn, last seen in Denver, Colorado. $100 reward. The crude sketch below the text was recognizable enough to send ice through her veins. Miguel, noticing her distress, followed her gaze to the poster. You know this woman, Miss Fletcher? He asked innocently. Zara forced herself to breathe normally. No, she lied. Just surprised to see such a thing in Lordsburg. Miguel shrugged. Bad people everywhere, I guess. Come, we should finish shopping before the clouds bring rain. She completed her errands mechanically, mind racing with implications. Harold Blackburn had been a wealthy businessman in Denver and her former fiancé. The man whose unwanted advances had turned violent the night she fled, leaving him unconscious but very much alive on his study floor. Or so she'd thought. That evening she picked at her dinner, anxiety making food tasteless. Ryder noticed her distraction but didn't comment until after they'd finished and were sitting before the fire in the study, a habit they'd fallen into on cooler nights. Something happened in town today, he said finally, a statement rather than a question. Zara stared into the flames, debating how much to reveal. This man had shown her nothing but kindness, but would that change if he knew the truth? She'd been running for so long that trust felt like a forgotten language. Zara. Her name in his deep voice drew her gaze to his face. Whatever it is, it might help to share the burden. The genuine concern in his expression broke something loose inside her. "There's a poster," she said quietly. "In town, with my name on it." His expression didn't change, but she noticed his posture straightened slightly. "Go on." "I'm wanted for questioning in connection with a death in Denver." She swallowed hard. "A man named Harold Blackburn. Did you kill him?" The question was asked without judgment, just a simple inquiry. "No," the denial burst from her with force. "At least, I didn't think so." She wrapped her arms around herself. "He was alive when I left him." Ryder remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "He was my fiancé," she explained, the words bitter on her tongue. "A prominent businessman twice my age, but my father owed him considerable debts. Our engagement was the payment." Ryder's expression darkened, but he didn't interrupt. "The night before our wedding, he tried to claim his rights early. When I refused, he became violent." Her voice trembled at the memory. "I fought back. There was a heavy paperweight on his desk. I struck him with it just once, enough to get away. He was unconscious but breathing when I fled." She looked up, expecting disgust or disbelief, but found only grim understanding in Ryder's eyes. "You've been running ever since," he concluded. "Yes, Denver, then Santa Fe, working my way south. I was heading to Mexico when—" She gestured vaguely. "When you found me." The silence that followed felt endless. Ryder rose and poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handing one to her before resuming his seat. "I believe you," he said simply. Relief washed through her so strongly that tears sprang to her eyes. "You do? I like to think I'm a decent judge of character." "You're many things, Zara Fletcher, but a cold-blooded killer isn't one of them." He took a measured sip of his whiskey. "The question is, what do you want to do now?" The question startled her. She'd expected him to tell her to leave, to protect himself and his ranch from association with a wanted woman. I don't know," she admitted. "Keep running, I suppose. I can't prove I didn't kill him." Ryder frowned thoughtfully. "Maybe you can't, but somebody might be able to." He set his glass down decisively. "First thing tomorrow, I'll send a telegram to a friend in Denver, former Army officer who became a Pinkerton. If Blackburn died from a single blow to the head, that supports your account. If he died some other way or later, that might clear you." Hope, dangerous and fragile, flickered to life in her chest. "You would do that for me?" His eyes held her steadily. Yes, such a simple answer, yet the weight behind it threatened to overwhelm her. "Why?" Ryder looked away into the flames. "Because 8 years ago I was falsely accused of stealing cattle. Would have hanged if not for a stranger who believed my story and helped prove my innocence." He turned back to her. "Sometimes all we need is one person willing to stand beside us." The tears she'd been fighting spilled over. "I've been alone so long," she whispered. Without warning, he reached across the space between them and took her hand, his calloused palm warm against her skin. "Not anymore." The simple touch anchored her, a human connection she'd been starved for. They sat in companionable silence as the fire burned lower, hands joined, neither willing to be the first to let go. True to his word, Ryder rode into town the next morning to send a telegram to his contact in Denver. Days passed with agonizing slowness as they waited for a response, each knock at the door or approaching Ryder causing Zara's heart to race with fear of discovery. "You're safe here," Ryder assured her repeatedly. "The men are loyal. No one's looking for you in Lordsburg yet." Yet. The unspoken implication hung between them. It was only a matter of time before someone connected the well-spoken new cook at Double V with the woman on the wanted poster. Despite this sword hanging over her head, life at the ranch continued. November arrived with its shorter days and longer nights, bringing the first serious preparations for winter. The men drove cattle to lower pastures, repaired outbuildings, and stockpiled firewood. Zara threw herself into pickling the last vegetables, smoking meat, and baking goods that would keep through the colder months. Working side by side with Ryder one evening, rendering fat for soap and candles, she found herself laughing at his story about a particularly stubborn bull named Ferdinand. The rich sound of her own laughter startled her. When had she last felt light enough to laugh genuinely? "I've missed that sound," Ryder commented, his eyes warm as they met hers across the bubbling pot of tallow. "What sound?" "Your laugh. It's been rare since you saw that poster." She sobered slightly. "I suppose I haven't had much cause for laughter lately." "Then I'll have to try harder," he said with determination. "Everyone deserves laughter, especially those carrying heavy burdens." His words touched her deeply, as did his consistent efforts to ease her worries. In the 2 weeks since her confession, he'd shown nothing but support, never treating her differently or suggesting she might be guilty. That unwavering faith was a balm to her wounded spirit. It was also becoming increasingly difficult to ignore the way her heart quickened when he entered a room, or how their casual touches passing dishes, brushing shoulders while working sent warmth coursing through her that had nothing to do with the kitchen fire. She told herself it was merely gratitude and the natural response to kindness after prolonged hardship, but in the quiet of night, she knew it was more. The answer from Denver arrived on a bitterly cold morning in late November. Ryder returned from town with a telegram in hand, his expression carefully neutral as he found Zara in the kitchen, kneading bread dough. "It's from Michael Callahan, my friend in Denver," he said, holding out the paper. Her flour-covered hands trembled as she wiped them on her apron. "Read it to me," she requested, not trusting herself to hold the telegram steady. Ryder unfolded the paper. "Blackburn alive. Concussion only. Death report false. Likely ploy to locate Fletcher. Investigating source of false report. Will advise." The words didn't register immediately. When they did, Zara's knees gave way. Ryder caught her before she hit the floor, guiding her to a chair at the kitchen table. "He's alive," she whispered, tears blurring her vision. "I didn't kill him." "No, you didn't," Ryder confirmed gently, crouching before her. "But someone wants you to think you did, wants you frightened enough to reveal yourself." The implications slowly penetrated her relief. "But why? Who would?" Understanding dawned. "Blackburn himself." Ryder nodded grimly. "That would be my guess." A man like that, wealthy, powerful, used to getting what he wants, wouldn't take kindly to being rejected and humiliated, especially not physically overpowered by the woman he considered his property. "He's trying to lure me back," Zara realized, ice forming in her stomach despite the kitchen's warmth. "Or at least find your location." Ryder's jaw tightened. "Either way, it's a cruel game he's playing. What do I do now?" The question emerged smaller than she intended, betraying her lingering fear. Ryder rose, his expression resolute. "First, you breathe. You're not a killer. That weight is off your shoulders." He placed his hands firmly on those shoulders, the warmth of his touch penetrating the fabric of her dress. "Second, we wait for Michael to investigate further. If Blackburn fabricated the death report, that's a serious offense. It could be enough to discredit him if it came to legal proceedings." "And third," she asked, drawing strength from his steady presence. "Third," he said, his voice softening, "you stop running. You're safe here, Zara. This is your home for as long as you want it to be. Home." The word resonated in her chest like the toll of a distant bell. How long had it been since she'd had a true home? "Thank you," she whispered, reaching up to cover one of his hands with hers. "For everything." Something shifted in his expression as their hands touched, a deepening of emotion that made her breath catch. For a moment she thought he might lean down, might cross the invisible line they'd both been careful to maintain. Instead, he straightened, though his gaze remained fixed on hers. "You should finish your bread," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "I need to check on the men in the north pasture." He left quickly, as if needing to escape the charged atmosphere between them. Zara returned to her dough, punching it with perhaps more vigor than necessary, trying to sort through her tumultuous emotions. Relief at her innocence warred with fear of Blackburn's vindictiveness, while beneath both currents ran the steady, growing awareness of her feelings for Ryder, feelings that seemed increasingly mutual. "One problem at a time," she murmured to herself, shaping the dough into loaves. "One day at a time." The weeks leading up to Christmas brought a peace to Double V that Zara had scarcely dared hope for. Another telegram from Denver confirmed that Harold Blackburn had indeed filed the false report, a discovery that led to his public embarrassment when Michael Callahan exposed the deception to Denver authorities. Though not prosecuted, Blackburn's reputation had suffered significantly, and according to Michael's latest update, he had abandoned his search for Zara in favor of salvaging his business dealings. "It seems you're free," Ryder told her one evening as they sat before the fire, sharing the news. "Blackburn has bigger problems now than finding you." Relief flooded through her, but it was tempered by a new uncertainty. With the threat removed, her reason for staying at Double V for needing protection no longer existed. The thought of leaving, however, created an ache she wasn't prepared for. "I suppose I could move on come spring," she said carefully, testing the words and watching for his reaction. "Find a position in a larger town, perhaps." Ryder's hand tightened around his glass. "Is that what you want?" The question hung between them, laden with unspoken meaning. Zara studied his face in the firelight, the strong lines, the shadow of beard he perpetually fought against, the eyes that had shown her nothing but kindness and understanding. "No," she admitted softly. "It isn't what I want at all." Something like hope flickered across his features. "What do you want, Zara?" The directness of the question demanded equal honesty in return. "I want to stay," she said simply. "I've found peace here that I never expected, purpose. A place where I belong." She hesitated, gathering courage for her next words. "And I've found you." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Then Ryder set his glass aside and moved to kneel before her chair, taking both her hands in his. "I've been trying to find the right words," he said, his voice low and earnest. "The proper way to tell you how these past months have changed everything, how the thought of you leaving ties my stomach in knots." Hope bloomed in her chest, warming her from within. "You want me to stay?" "I want more than that," he admitted, his thumbs tracing circles on her palms. "I want to build something real with you, Zara, not out of gratitude or obligation, but because what's grown between us is the most honest thing I've known in years." Joy threatened to overwhelm her, but caution made her hesitate. "People will talk. They'll say you married your cook, that I trapped you somehow." A smile tugged at his mouth. "Let them talk. I'm long past caring what others think." His expression grew serious again. "But I won't pressure you. If friendship is all you can offer, I'll treasure that and ask for nothing more." In answer, Zara leaned forward and placed her hand against his cheek. "Ryder Vance," she said softly, "for a smart man, you can be remarkably dense sometimes." Before he could respond, she closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that started gentle but quickly deepened as his arms came around her. The warmth that had been building between them for months ignited into something fiercer, a recognition of belonging that transcended words. When they finally parted, both breathing unsteadily, Ryder rested his forehead against hers. "Is that a yes?" he asked, a smile in his voice. "That," Zara replied, her own smile breaking free, "is a most definite yes." Christmas at Double V that year was a celebration unlike any in the ranch's history. With the news of their engagement spreading quickly, the hands decorated the house with cedar boughs and strung popcorn, while Zara baked for days to prepare a feast. The weather cooperated with a light dusting of snow that transformed the landscape into a glittering wonderland without impeding travel. On Christmas Eve, they gathered in the main house. Ryder, Zara, all 8 ranch hands, the visiting pastor and his wife, and 3 neighboring families. The simple ceremony took place before the fireplace, Zara wearing a deep green dress ordered specially from Santa Fe, and carrying a bouquet of winter greenery tied with ribbon. As she spoke her vows, looking into Ryder's eyes that shone with unmistakable love, Zara felt the last pieces of her old life fall away. The woman who had fled Denver in terror, who had stolen food to survive, who had expected punishment rather than compassion, that woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who had found not just safety but genuine happiness. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the pastor declared, and the room erupted in cheers as Ryder pulled her into a kiss that promised a lifetime of tomorrows. Later, after the celebration had wound down and their guests departed, they stood together on the porch, wrapped in a blanket against the cold, watching stars pierce the velvet blackness of the New Mexico sky. "Happy?" Ryder asked, his arms secure around her waist. "Beyond words," she answered truthfully. "A year ago, I couldn't have imagined this life." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Fate has strange ways of bringing people together. If you hadn't been desperate enough to break into that store, if you hadn't caught me," she continued. "If I'd called the sheriff instead of offering you a job." Zara turned in his arms to face him. "We found each other against impossible odds. That has to mean something." "It means everything," he said solemnly, then smiled. "And it means I'll never have to eat my own biscuits again." She laughed and swatted his arm. "Is that why you married me? For my cooking?" His expression sobered as he cupped her face in his hands. "I married you because you're the bravest, most resilient woman I've ever known, because you make me laugh and think and feel. Because the thought of waking up without you beside me is unbearable." His voice dropped lower. "And because I love you, Zara Vance, with everything I am." The new name still sent a thrill through her. "I love you too," she whispered, rising on tiptoe to kiss him as snowflakes began to drift down around them, blessing their union with winter's quiet benediction. Spring came early to the New Mexico territory in 1879, bringing green grass to the pastures and wildflowers to the hillsides. Double V Ranch flourished under the combined management of Ryder and Zara, whose practical skills complemented each other in ways that benefited both the land and the business. The months of their marriage had been the happiest of Zara's life. Every day brought new discoveries about ranching, about Ryder, about the surprising depth of her own strength. She learned to ride properly, to handle simple veterinary emergencies, to negotiate with cattle buyers, all while maintaining the home that had become the heart of the operation. Ryder, too, seemed transformed by their partnership. The reserved man who had caught her stealing now laughed more readily, sang along with his fiddle playing in the evenings, and spoke openly of plans for their future. The ranch hands noted the change with approval, telling Zara privately that the boss had never seemed so content. "You've been good medicine for him," Hank told her one afternoon as they watched Ryder breaking a spirited young horse in the corral. "Man was too alone with his thoughts before you came." On a warm day in late April, as Zara tended the kitchen garden she'd expanded considerably, Ryder rode in from checking fence lines earlier than expected. She straightened from her work, wiping soil from her hands, concerned by his unusual return time. "Is everything all right?" she called as he dismounted. His smile dispelled her worry. "Everything's fine. Better than fine, actually." He pulled an envelope from his pocket. "This came for you while I was in town." Curious, Zara took the envelope, noting the Denver postmark with surprise. Inside was a letter from Michael Callahan, Ryder's friend who had helped clear her name. "Harold Blackburn is dead," she read aloud, shock coloring her voice. "Apparently he suffered a stroke 3 weeks ago. His affairs are in considerable disorder with multiple creditors coming forward." Ryder watched her carefully. "How do you feel about that?" She considered the question honestly. "Relieved, I suppose." "Not happy. I wouldn't wish death on anyone, even him. But relieved that chapter is truly closed," he nodded, understanding. "There's more," he prompted, gesturing to the letter. She continued reading, her eyes widening. "According to Michael, Blackburn had no direct heirs. His estate is being divided among various business partners and distant relatives, but..." She looked up at Ryder in disbelief. "There's a small trust that was apparently established for me before our engagement was announced. $5,000 to be released upon his death or my marriage, whichever came first." Ryder's eyebrows rose. "That's a considerable sum." "It makes no sense," Zara said, bewildered. Why would he establish a trust for me then hunt me so vindictively? Men like Blackburn are complicated, Ryder suggested. Perhaps part of him did care for you in his way, even as his pride drove him to pursue you for the perceived humiliation. Or maybe it was established earlier, when your father first arranged the match, as a gesture of good faith. Whatever the reason, the unexpected inheritance represented freedom of a kind. Zara had never expected financial security that was hers alone, not dependent on her father's arrangements or her husband's provision. "What will you do with it?" Ryder asked, his tone carefully neutral. Zara studied his face, recognizing the careful absence of expectation in his expression. This man, who had given her everything without asking for anything in return, would never presume to direct her newfound resources. "First," she said decisively, "I'd like to expand the ranch house. Add a proper study for you, a larger kitchen, and perhaps—" She hesitated, then continued more softly, "a nursery." Ryder went very still. "A nursery," she nodded, a smile spreading across her face. "Dr. Matthews confirmed it yesterday. We're going to have a baby come November." The transformation of his expression was something Zara would remember all her days, shock giving way to wonder, then to a joy so profound it seemed to illuminate him from within. In 2 strides he reached her, lifting her off the ground and spinning her in a circle that sent her laughing. "A baby," he repeated when he set her down, his voice thick with emotion. "Our baby. Our family," she corrected gently, placing his hand over her still flat stomach. "The beginning of it, anyway." Tears glistened in his eyes unashamedly. "When I found you that night in the store, I thought I was just offering a stranger a second chance." He shook his head in wonder. "I never imagined I was finding my own future." Zara stretched up to kiss him, pouring all her gratitude and love into the contact. "Sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as misfortune," she murmured against his lips. "And sometimes the man who catches you stealing turns out to be the answer to prayers you didn't know you were making." November 18, 1879, brought the birth of Robert Hank Vance after a long but uncomplicated labor. The healthy boy with his father's blue eyes and a thatch of dark hair quickly became the center of the Double V universe. Ranch hands who had faced down stampeding cattle and hostile raiders turned awkwardly gentle when allowed to hold the tiny infant, and Ryder discovered a talent for soothing midnight fussing with violin lullabies that never failed to quiet his son. As winter settled over the land, bringing crackling fires and early evenings, Zara often found herself pausing in the midst of household tasks to marvel at the fullness of her life. The expanded ranch house, completed just before Robert's birth, provided ample space for their growing family. The trust money had also funded improvements to the ranch operation's new breeding stock, better equipment, and a second well that would help them weather future droughts. Most precious of all was the family they had created, not just the 3 of them, but the extended family of loyal ranch hands, neighboring settlers, and the community they'd built in Lordsburg. Twice a month, they hosted Sunday dinners for anyone who cared to come, their table always stretching to accommodate one more guest. On Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year after their wedding, Zara sat in the rocking chair before the fire, nursing Robert while Ryder played a gentle melody on his violin. When the baby drifted to sleep, milk-drunk and contented, she carefully laid him in the cradle Ryder had crafted by hand. "He looks like you when he sleeps," Ryder observed, setting his violin aside to join her by the fire. "Poor child," she teased, leaning against his shoulder as they watched the flames. "Lucky child," Ryder corrected, pressing a kiss to her hair, "to have your spirit and determination." "And your kindness," she added softly. "Your capacity for seeing the best in people, even when they are at their worst." They sat in comfortable silence for a time, enjoying the rare quiet moment in their busy lives. Finally, Ryder spoke, his tone reflective. "Do you ever think about how differently things might have gone? If I'd been harsher that night, or if you'd refused my offer?" Zara considered the question. "Sometimes, But then I look at Robert, at our home, at everything we've built together, and I can't imagine any other path." She turned to face him fully. "You gave me more than food or shelter, Ryder. You gave me dignity when I had none left. You saw value in me when I felt worthless." He cupped her cheek, his gaze intense. "I saw you, Zara, just you, brave and proud and determined, even in desperation." His thumb traced her lower lip. "And I've been falling deeper in love with you every day since. Even when I burn the biscuits," she asked with a small smile, "especially then," he laughed. "Reminds me you're not perfect, just perfect for me." She kissed him then, slow and deep, putting into the embrace all the words that still sometimes failed her: gratitude, passion, and the abiding love that had grown from the most unlikely beginning. Later, as they prepared for bed, Zara paused at the window, looking out at the star-filled sky above their land. From desperate thief to beloved wife and mother, her journey had been neither straight nor easy. Yet every hardship had led her here, to this place, this man, this life that exceeded her wildest dreams. "Coming to bed," Ryder called softly from across the room. Zara turned from the window, her heart full. "Yes," she answered, moving toward the future she had once thought impossible. "I'm home." In the years that followed, Double V Ranch prospered under the Vance's stewardship. Robert was joined by a sister, Catherine Elizabeth, in 1881, and another brother, Michael James, in 1884. The children grew strong in the clear New Mexico air, learning ranching ways alongside reading and arithmetic in the schoolroom Zara established in one wing of the expanded house. By 1885, their reputation had spread throughout the territory. Double V beef commanded premium prices, and their breeding stock was sought after by ranchers from Texas to California. Ryder served 2 terms as president of the Territorial Cattlemen's Association, while Zara founded Lordsburg's first lending library and helped establish a proper school for the growing town. Their marriage, forged in unusual circumstances, strengthened with each passing year. The passion between them never dimmed, maturing into a partnership of equals that neighbors spoke of with admiration and sometimes envy. They weathered the inevitable hardships of ranch life: drought years, cattle disease, the financial panic of '93 with the resilience of those who had already overcome greater odds. In the spring of 1898, as their eldest prepared to depart for college back east, Zara and Ryder stood on their porch watching the sunset paint the western sky in shades of gold and crimson. 20 years had left their mark on both, silver threading Ryder's dark hair, fine lines at the corners of Zara's eyes, but time had only deepened the connection between them. "You remember what you said to me that first night?" Zara asked, leaning against the porch railing. "When you caught me stealing," Ryder smiled, the memory clear despite the years. "I believe you forgot to pay for those items," he quoted. "Not very romantic, was it?" "It changed my life," she said simply. "One moment of compassion instead of judgment." He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, drawing her close against the evening chill. "Best decision I ever made, bringing you home." Zara turned in his embrace, studying the beloved face that had been her constant these 20 years. "Thank you for catching me," she whispered. "For seeing possibility where others would have seen only a thief." "Thank you for staying," he returned, bending to kiss her with the familiar tenderness that still made her heart quicken. "For building this life with me." Behind them, the sounds of their children's laughter drifted from the house, a testament to the family created from that unlikely beginning. Before them stretched the land they had nurtured together, fertile, productive, a legacy for generations to come. From desperate hunger to abundant harvest, from solitary survival to the richness of belonging, their journey had come full circle. The cowboy who had caught a starving woman stealing food had offered more than punishment or charity. He had offered a home, and in doing so, found his own heart's true north. As darkness settled over Double V Ranch, stars emerged one by one above the New Mexico plains, bearing witness to a love that had grown from the smallest seed of compassion into something enduring and magnificent, a love as vast and eternal as the western sky itself.